Welcome everyone to this special interview with world-renowned hypnotherapist Freddy Jacquin, a true star in the field of. We will dive today into the world of hypnotherapy techniques, original Freddy's techniques. And yes, so be prepared to uncover some secrets about human mind. Freddy, can you share with us what inspired you to become a hypnotherapist?
I've got four sons, and I've always been interested in how good we could be physically. I've always been interested in sport and keeping well. But I've also known, especially when my older boys were young, it became apparent that, physically we're limited, whereas mentally we're not. And so I've always been interested in the mind and how good we could be and how we can improve our mind. And then back in the early 1990s, I just saw an advert for hypnotherapy classes. Successful hypnotherapy, that was the name of the actual training. And I just thought I'd go and see what it was all about, just out of curiosity, really. So I did the training, and I have to say it wasn't the best training, looking back at it now, from where I am now, but it got me into it. And I got back, and then my son said, "Oh, can you help me lose some weight?" And I did that. And a few other people asked me, and I thought I loved doing this, and I had a sales company at the time. So I got an office and I started doing hypnosis kind of part-time. And then I thought, I love it so much. Why am I doing anything else? So I threw myself into the hypnosis, and here I am 30 years later now, and still loving it, still enjoying it, and still finding new ways of changing our mind, for want of a better way of putting it.
Wonderful. And did you have any mentors? From whom did you learn? Who influenced your hypnotherapy style?
I came into this, as I said, from a sales point of view, from a sales background. So, I was never into psychology or any of that kind of thing, other than from how do we influence people. And so I did that course, as I said, and it wasn't very good. It was really based on, it was called hypnoanalysis, which is kind of the forerunner of regression to cause. I mean, back in when I started, we'd actually lay people on a couch, a bit like Freud, and then sit there and ask them questions about, what were they thinking. And to get back to that, we called it in those days, get back to the cathartic moment when the aha moment, oh, that's why I'm like I am. And then to kind of sort it out from there, which, looking back at it now, is a very kind of painful way of dealing with things. So I as soon as I did the course and I came out of there and I started seeing a few people, the book that I read was about Milton Erickson. And I think it was Hypnotic Language Patterns of Milton Erickson, Volume 1, I think it was, written by Bandler and Grinder, who were the forerunners of NLP. So from that book, it led me to reading a bit about NLP. There was a couple of really good books at the time. I think it was Transformations and Frogs into Princes. They're both really good books if you can get hold of them now. And that was back, they'd been written in like the 1970s, 80s by Bandler and Grinder. So I read those books. And from there, I really put my own things together. And that's where I'm working now. But didn't really have a mentor as such, someone, a real person as such that I was working with. It was always, what I'd read about Erickson. And Erickson's work made sense to me because he was what I suppose we'd call a forward-focused therapist, where, you're looking to see how people want to be rather than why they are like they are. And I say it to my clients as well. I say, it may be interesting to know why you are like you are, but we have hypnosis, so it's really no consequence. We have a tool that can help people move from where they are to where they want to be very quickly. So most of the things that I've developed have been in that way, really.
And what inspired you to develop your own techniques, like the arrow technique?
I don't think I ever set out to develop something. It's just the way my mind works, and especially the arrow technique. I'd actually suffered myself for a long time from what's known as kidney stones, and they're very painful. And before I did any hypnosis, when I was in that pain, waiting for medication, because I'd have to go to the hospital when I had those kidney stones to get medication, I would go to a very strong memory. You know, at the time when I was traveling through France, it was always the same memory because it was, you know, and what I would do is I would think about this memory, then I'd get into it, into the detail. And what was the number plate on our car? What was the, you know, what were we eating? What was the scenery? And the more I tried to dig into the detail, the kind of further away I got from the here and now, if you like, dissociated from the present. And I got to the point where I could actually step back into that memory. And when I was in that memory looking back to now, if you like, I could, for that period of time, be free of the pain. But it was hard to hold that for very, very long. So there was that, and reading about Erickson and his idea of using the pain itself as the focus of attention to draw people into hypnosis. So I was working with a group of smokers, actually. And afterwards, the lady said, "Can you help me with some pain?" And I hadn't done anything up to then, so I thought it was beyond my remit, really. But then I thought, well, I can put these two things, I had them in my mind. So there was another lady there, so they both stopped after the session. And I just ran what we should now call the arrow technique. It was basically using dissociation and focus of attention. And it worked really well. So I've never set out to develop anything, but things occur to me. Sometimes, I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people, I wake up in the night with an idea. It's like when I'm in that deep sleep, my unconscious mind is going through all the things I can do and change. So, and I wake up in the morning with an idea and I think, well, I'll try it, you know, and generally not on my clients, on somebody, some friends, I'll try it out on. So yeah, that's how it's developed really. And that's how my mind works. And because I've worked with over 35,000 clients face to face, that's in the same room, not on Zoom. I think I've learned a lot from my clients, the things that work, the things that don't work. And I've tried to, as much as I can, cut out as much fluff as possible, you know, the things that are just there for fillers. So it gets down to the nuts and bolts, the bones of what actually works. And that's why the things that I've developed are very simple, really. You know, I think they're very easy to learn techniques and very powerful.
Okay, so could you tell us more about your techniques?
Well, the arrow technique, as I said, we started off as a technique for chronic pain, as I term it, useless and unnecessary pain, pain that's outlived its purpose. You know, it's just things like arthritis or cancerous pain or migraines, things that are no longer protecting us, but there's still a remnant of that pain left in our body. Mm-hmm. But then we pretty soon, because I travel with my son Anthony, we travel over the world training people. We would obviously have conversations on our trips, and it came pretty clear to us that if you can deal with chronic physical pain, then you can deal with chronic emotional pain, you know, heartache, even down to depression and sadness and grief. Once it's outlived, I mean, it's obviously as a natural time for grief, but you know, if you're still grieving 5 years on, 10 years on, that's not good. And it's a way of just letting go of those emotions. So it then started for chronic emotional pain. And then my way mine works, what if we can eliminate something? What if we can, when we pass through the target, what if we could flood our body with a feeling of confidence or self-belief? Or in what I love, as you know, because you've worked with me, unconditional self-love. Because for me, that's the bottom line now for all my clients. You know, I say, why would you bother to lose the weight if you didn't love yourself? Why would you stop doing the drugs or cut down on your drinking or create the life you want if you don't have an unconditional self-love? So the arrow became what we call a utility tool. I kind of liken it to the adjustable spanner. You know, until they created the adjustable spanner, you needed loads of spanners for different nuts. I don't mean that rudely, but now we have one tool to deal with all those nuts. So yeah, I like to think of it as an adjustable, utility tool. You can use it for so many different things. So that's how the arrow came about. But then working with people and working with limiting beliefs, really. You know, I think when it comes down to our therapy, whatever form of therapy you're running, whether it's psychotherapy, CBT, whether it's regression to cause, whether it's hypnotherapy, what we're ultimately trying to do is change a belief. Because the client comes in with a belief they can't overcome the problem, or they can't quit that smoking habit, or they can't stop drinking, or they can't lose the fear. So they come in with that belief. Ultimately, we want our client going out believing, of course I can quit this habit. Of course I can do the things, let go of that irrational fear. So ultimately, the bottom line for all therapy is changing beliefs. So I looked at most of our beliefs, and one of the sad things about us as human beings is that most of our beliefs, who we are, what we can, what we cannot do, most of those beliefs were created by a child under 7, which is a pretty scary thought, really. Because you wouldn't have like a 5-year-old daughter of yours making a lifelong decision about who you are or what you could do. Yet most of our beliefs are created by a child under 7. So I created a technique which I call the blink and delete technique. Again, very simple. Whenever we come up against one of those negative beliefs, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'll never achieve that, we just ask the question, when did I make that decision? I can't do it. And it's a little bit more involved, not very much more involved, but I won't tell you the whole thing now, because now I want to do our training. And I say, well, I know it all, so there's no point. Yeah. So, but basically that technique, what it does, it enables you to go back to that very moment in seconds, not weeks and months. Look at it again from where we are now, and then ask the question, is that belief any longer viable now that I've evolved? And if it's not, we have a way of dealing with it and letting it go and doing it in minutes rather than weeks and months. So there's lots of different things, and I created a thing called a time machine. Again, it's really, if a client says, you know, I've got this fear, I fell in a pond when I was 4 years old, been scared of water ever since, whatever it might be, then with a time machine, you can go back to that moment very quickly in hypnosis. And again, just look at it again and let go of the emotion and keep the learnings, but let go of the emotion and do it in minutes and moments rather than weeks and months. So there's a few techniques, and there's one just bubbling at the moment, which I'll tell you about if you come and see the course, because by the time you get to the course, which is like 8 weeks from now, I'll have that fully developed. And I think, again, it's a very powerful technique. So there's lots of different techniques I've created purely because of working with clients and listening to clients and thinking about the things we're already doing, and utilising those techniques in a new way. That's really how I create those techniques. One of those minds that are always thinking, how can we do this better? How can we do it? Maybe because I'm lazy. I think that's what it is. How can we do this in an easier way? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's how I create those techniques.
Excellent. And can you tell us about some memorable successes that you created using your techniques?
Well, I mean, I think for me as a human being, I don't think there's anything more satisfying than helping another human being out of the pain they're suffering. So even though it's a very simple technique, it still amazes me. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm teaching it for a long time. You know, I saw a man that was suffering from phantom limb pain. He'd had his leg, you know, from the knee down taken away, but he had a terrible pain in that foot that no longer existed. And the medical people were just giving him painkillers for a pain in a part of his body that he didn't have. It sounds mad, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, it's very satisfying. I've seen lots of people who are living their life now without the pain they were suffering. And that's emotional as well. You know, emotional pain. I created it's a metaphor really. It's called Girl on the Train, about just giving back. You know, when sometimes we're in a relationship, and even though a relationship's finished, you know, you're still carrying some of that stuff, the hurt and the pain and sadness from that relationship. And that for me is a really lovely thing to do, to just give back all of that pain and sadness, metaphorically, of course. But, you know, we know with our minds what we can imagine, you know, manifests as physical relief as well. So I saw in 2006, I helped 5,000 people quit smoking habit in 1 year.
That's very impressive.
You know, and those people out there living their lives, when we do this work, you can get a bit blasé. Oh, it's just another smoker. Mm-hmm. But we forget about the effect it has on their life. And some of those people now, you know, some people came to see me in the 1990s because they had young kids and they wanted to quit smoking.
Yes.
And the chances are that those people, now those kids will be in their 20s, maybe in their 30s, the chances are those kids didn't start smoking because their parents stopped. They had much more money to help their families and all those things. We kind of forget about that. The ripple effect that you help one person.
Yeah.
I've helped people with fertility. I remember I saw a couple and it was, they trying to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
In our language, try implies failure.
Yes.
So, that was a nice. I've still got the card from them saying that their baby was born. They told me the little boy's name. So, there's so many wonderful things that we can do with hypnosis. And the joy of it for me is that I don't actually do anything. I don't see that it's not me putting my influence on someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just helping people get out their own way, really. That's how I see it. And as I said, changing that belief. They come in believing they can't quit this or I can't stop that. And then they go out and they go, yeah. And some people say to me, that was like magical. They say it's amazing. I said, no, you always had the ability. You just didn't know you had the ability. So that's what I love about it. And the other joy is, of course, as you know, because as long as I can speak, I can do this work wherever and now we've got Zoom and we've got all these incredible translation techniques, with actual things you can speak into that will translate your voice for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can do this work anywhere in the world. And that's the joy of it. I don't need lots of equipment. I don't need anything other than my voice. And that's why I love this so much.
Amazing. Have you had any particular challenges or setbacks? And could you share how you overcame them?
Well, I think when we first started this, and when I was so enthused about starting this work, I sold my business, office, and then sat there for weeks waiting for another client. The challenges of building a business from this, because we're so enthused about it and we're passionate about it. I don't think many people come into this work thinking, I'm going to earn a fortune from it. They come in it because they love doing it, and the feeling of helping other people is immense. Mm-hmm. But then we have to live. So the challenges have really been to start off with for me, because you have to learn the skills of marketing, as well as just, it's great having these skills. It's great to be able to help people. But there's no point in having those skills if you don't know how to get people in your office, you don't know how to get people in your chair, which is a whole new skill. And I think that's what a lot of people, they don't really think that through when they start. I like to think, I run my own training, Jacquin Hypnosis Academy. But the last 2 lessons of that is purely about marketing. Because as I say, you can get these skills and you can have really good skills, but if you can't get clients, the only challenges for me have been initially how to get those clients in. The work itself, if you've got the right tools and you've got the right attitude to why you're doing this work, then you can continue to learn. But it does also come a point where, and I've seen it because I've seen which are people I call kind of rudely course junkies. It's just got to think I've got to learn one more thing before I get started. And I think we need to get started. You can still learn and get better. I think you do learn and get better actually working with clients than continue doing the training. But it's obviously there's value in doing extra training, because if you go to a course and you get one nugget of gold that's going to help your client, then it's worth doing. If you come and do our course, obviously you're going to get loads of nuggets of gold, not just one.
Could you tell now about your approach to teaching hypnotherapy? What sets your teaching methods apart from other hypnotherapists?
Well, as I said earlier, what I teach has cut out all the fluff. So none of it's complex. The techniques I teach can be learned and in 2 days. And I know that at 2 days with somebody, even if they've never done any hypnosis before, they will learn how to hypnotize, and they'll learn how to help people out of pain, fear, anxiety, and negative habitual behavior. And also how to tap into all their own powers in the way of confidence, self-esteem. So my methods of training are very simple. The first thing we do is teach people how to hypnotize. And that's not difficult. I think people think that's got to be really complex. How do I hypnotize people? But once you realize that we're being hypnotized all the time, everyone's a hypnotist, they don't know they are, or they're a self-hypnotist. If you think about most of your limitations, you weren't born with those limitations. Someone at some point suggested that you can't do this or you can't do that, or it was self-suggested, I'm never going to achieve it. So teaching people what hypnosis is important. And it's only ever going to be my opinion if I'm teaching people, because everyone speak to a million hypnotherapists and all have a different idea of what hypnosis is. But for me, I do believe it is an altered state. But I believe we can induce that state very easily. And once you're in that altered state, the conscious part of our brain, the part that believes it is us, for a moment is out of the way. And your unconscious mind, which is everything else, that's monitoring your heartbeat, your blood pressure, your body temperature, that's keeping you safe and well from the moment you're born to the moment you draw your last breath. Your unconscious mind is never off. It's always there. Whereas when you sleep, your conscious mind goes to sleep for a while. But your unconscious mind is always working for you. So that unconscious mind goes, right, what do you want from me? And then as a therapist, we can just feed back what the client wants as their outcome. And the unconscious mind will then find a way to make that happen. So my teaching method, I teach the techniques that I do. And in those 2 days when I do a 2-day training, the modern hypnotism workshop, I teach the methods, I demonstrate with one of our students, and then we get students practicing. Because I want everyone, not just to go, it's not a lecture. I don't want those 2 days, when I do this, any course really, I don't want it to be a lecture and you sit there and you listen to me speaking. I want it to be interactive. So not only do you see me working with a real person on a real problem, but also we then pair everyone up so they work with each other. So they get used to doing that. And I think that's why those 2 days are really effective. If you go off there knowing you can use these techniques, I think that's the difference, really. I want people to learn these techniques, and I'm going to teach 4 or 5 techniques. All of them powerful. When you learn these techniques, you'll be able to help someone out of pain for sure, physical and emotional. You'll be able to help someone out of, with irrational fears, phobias, and anxiety. You'll be able to help people overcome negative habitual behaviours, things like smoking, cannabis, even cocaine, nail biting, all those negative habitual behaviours. And you'll also be able to help people tap into a feeling of unconditional self-love, self-esteem, and confidence. But not only that, because we're working with each other with these techniques, because we're practicing with each other, my full expectation is that the people that attend, who are doing the training, will also, over those 2 days, let go of their own irrational fears, let go of their own limiting beliefs, overcome maybe habitual behaviours that they have and no longer suit them anymore. So my expectation with people is not only are they going to learn these techniques, but they're also going to have transformation, a personal transformation over that weekend. And that's kind of been proven what it is when we've done this before. We've run all over the world, really. It's going to be more than just a training weekend. It's going to be a personal transformational weekend as well. And they're going to go off, one, with a feeling of unconditional self-love, which is my main goal for everyone on that course. They're going to understand their worth and their value. And I always say, beyond the car they drive, house they live in, the clothes they wear, their own intrinsic, true, beautiful selves. That's what I want. And also to give them the tools that whatever the client walks in with, they'll be able to say, I can help you. So that's my goal.
You've been teaching already around the world. You've been giving such modern hypnotism workshops around the world. Do you remember any success stories from your students?
Well, as I said, I've trained thousands of people. We've trained on 5 continents. We've been training people in India and Brazil and all throughout Europe. I work in the States. We've trained people who are surgeons who now use this. One surgeon in Brazil, he's an osteosurgeon. So he works particularly with motorcycle accident and leg breaks. And he uses the arrow technique pre and post-op. And he said there's been zero, in the people he's worked with this technique, there's been 0 infections, which is like unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And the healing time for when they can actually bear weight on that bone has come down from 45 days to 35 days. That's one thing. I had a Harvard-trained doctor come to see me when I was doing some training in Canada to ask me the question about how the arrow technique works. because he's using it with clients. And he said, and one lady had been walking with a stick for years. She forgot and walked out of his consultant room without the stick because the pain had gone. And then she realised she didn't have a stick with her. He said, how's that happening? This is a guy who's been trained in Harvard. He's got all the medical understanding, but he's using these techniques. So we've got doctors in the UK, all around the world, people in emergency situations using these techniques. It's the personal things, like when someone helps somebody who's got fertility problems achieve their goal of having a child. I mean, what more can you ask for? I've helped people with heroin addiction. I'm still amazed and I still get as much joy out of it.
Yes, it's very unbelievable stories when one watches some testimonials from your students, from people who took your training, how they get rid of pain, which they had for many years, chronic pain, and just in 5 minutes they get rid of it.
And it's not me. It's not like my son, who I work with for 10 years. When I was demonstrating in the class, he'd walk out the class. You say, don't say it's going to go. What if it doesn't? But after, obviously he's a believer. But I know that I can train people we have an hour together working with the arrow technique. I know anyone that comes does our training. So it's not just my son used to say it's Freddy power. It was something intrinsic with me. It was never that. Anyone that comes and does the training, at the end of that training, would be able to help someone. If they've got chronic pain, that would help them. And that's what I love about this. It's not just me. I'm keeping it to myself. I'm going to say, right, look at me, look what I can do. No, I want everyone to learn how to do this. Everyone that's working with people who are in pain, I want them to learn how to do these techniques. So it is miraculous, but it's not me that's creating a miracle. It's the actual words and the understanding that we give people.
And Freddy, you have a new book that came out. There's your techniques described in this book. Can you tell us about the book?
My first book, which was just called Hypnotherapy. Yes. It is. That's it. It's got my picture on it. Put you off. That's kind of one of the best-selling books on hypnotherapy. But then my beliefs haven't changed, but my understanding has changed over the years since I've written that book. And there are simple understandings that I thought I need to get out in another book. And I called it The Exquisite Art of Hypnosis, beyond techniques and protocols. What is it beyond the actual words and the techniques? Because I think many people, especially some schools, they give people scripts. And I'm not against scripts. When you start out, we need some words. But I think a lot of students think, I'm just going to read these words like it's a spell. But what is it beyond the techniques and the protocols that make you truly effective? And what I've tried to put in that book, in fact, I believe I put in that book, is my answer to that. And because I'm lucky enough through my travels to have met some incredible hypnotherapists around the world, I reached out to a few, and they're in that book as well. There's chapters by Mike Nan, by Laurie Hammond, by James Tripp, Rob de Groof, wonderful people that I've met. And there's one page, the guy who does my marketing, Kev, he's written a chapter as well on how to create the business you want at the end. I'd like to think that what I'm teaching and what the students are getting from it, and I use these words at the end of when I'm working with hypnotherapists. I say, being able to create the life that you want by helping others create the life they want. Like, what better way of creating the life you want than helping others create the life they want? And so my book, like with my work, my intention is always that the client or the reader gets the outcome they want. I'd like to think that someone who's never done a hypnosis before could pick up that book, and if they read it and they understand how hypnosis works and they look at the techniques, they'll be able to do that just by reading that book. I mean, I remember quickly when I first went to Hypnothoughts Live, which is the biggest conference in the world in Las Vegas. It was 2018, and I was walking towards the conference, and a man stopped me, and he said, "You're Freddy Jacquin?" I said, "Yeah," which was strange. I was on the other side of the world. He said, "I bought your book." I said, "Thanks." He said, "My mum has been in pain for 20 years, He said, "No, I've ran the arrow as you describe it in that book." He said, "She's out playing. Thanks very much." So if one person reads my book and helps someone, but I'd like to think more than one person's read it. It's my goal with that book. It's my goal with my training.
Yeah.
To share this. I want everyone. I'd love everyone to learn how to do some hypnosis.
Yes, and yeah, I read the older book before I came to your workshop in Ireland this year in January, and I found it very helpful to know already the techniques that we've learned, we've practiced intensively, we watched you demonstrating them, seeing the results live, how you create them. And yeah, so it's very helpful to know a bit. It's not, of course, not necessary, but those who consider coming to the course can.
It's out. It's the Hypnotherapy book's out as an Audible book. And I think the joy of the Audible book is because you can experience the techniques for yourself. You can read in the book, you can read it.
Yes.
But in the audio book, you can actually go, "Okay, I'm going to listen to this." As you know, if I got pain, I'm going to listen to the arrow technique and run it through myself. And you can see from that if it works for you, and if it does, then I know it is going to. And then you can think, "Okay, well, it works, and I'd like to learn how to do it." And yes, you can learn it from the book. It's never as good as the real thing. So come and do the trick.
Yes, to be in that group, the energy was so high, in what you told, that you aim to increase the self-love, unconditional self-love in every participant, and one feels it, and the energy of the group is just incredible. It's an amazing experience.
Because I love it. It's not a job. I kind of jokingly say I qualified as a hypnotherapist in the early 1990s, and I've never worked since. And that's how I feel about it, really. I love talking about this. I love teaching it. As I said, I want as many people to know how to do it. If you've got someone you love in pain, I'd love to be able to people to be able to say, "Okay, well, let me help you." And that's my goal. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Freddy. You're a very inspirational person, and your expertise, your passion for hypnotherapy is very inspirational. Your techniques are amazing.
Can I just say, there is nothing I can do that anyone else can't do. That's my goal is, as I said, is to help as many people as possible. That's a bit more of a way of putting it. So I appreciate you asking me along. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, you put all your efforts and get amazing results in teaching others and making them confident. Thank you for your interest in the human mind and hypnotherapy, and we see you next time.